This is Football Night in America, served by Applebee's.
Sunday 6 of the NFL season. Mike Tirico, Tony Dungy, Rodney Harris, and Mike Florio set to break it all down for you, at least what we saw. So we have 10 teams, guys, with 0 or 1 win. A dozen teams with 4 or 5 wins. So really a separation here in the league. Not a big middle class at the moment. Rodney, I want to start with you on Green Bay, Tampa Bay, because I think we all saw it as a little bit of an early season measuring stick. What do you take away from how well the Bucs played, especially on defense against the Pack?
Yeah, I look at defense coordinator Todd Bowles. I thought he was terrific today because, when you hear about, everyone's talking about the game and what they expect to happen, I didn't expect, Todd Bowles and Tampa Bay to come out and just blitz Aaron Rodgers, send all this different pressure, and I thought he did a terrific job of keeping them confused and really not letting them get comfortable behind that offensive line, Coach.
I agree with you. I didn't think they'd come out blitzing because I didn't think their corners could handle those wide receivers from Green Bay. But when it showed that they could, boy, that just brought more and more pressure, and it amped up. And you could see Aaron Rodgers wasn't comfortable. I think the first time all year he had people around him and in his face.
For sure. Mike Florio, I'm thinking about the Bucs and the storylines the first couple of weeks, right? We had Arians get on Brady a little bit. We had Brady getting on his teammates and the whole counting downs deal. But here they come in this game. No turnovers, no penalties, a first in Buccaneers franchise history.
And I wondered how the other players in the locker room would react to Tom Brady's refusal to acknowledge that he made that mistake against the Bears. But when Jamal Williams, the Packers running back, came out Friday and said, our quarterback always knows what down it is, that's when I knew that they'd gone too far. You don't say that. You don't give Tom Brady that extra thing, even though he says we never see that stuff baloney. They see that stuff. And I'll say this about the Packers. In the Matt LaFleur era, when they lose, for the most part, they don't mess around. They get blown off the field. I mean, they typically win, but when it's a loss at the Chargers last year, twice against the 49ers last year, and now against the Bucs this year, they don't keep anybody in suspense about the outcome of the game.
Chris Sims made a good point as we're watching the game. He said this Green Bay defense, they have some good stats, but they're used to playing from ahead. Yeah. And when they get in front and you're one-dimensional and all you can do is throw, then they bring all these different blitzes and pass rush stuff. When they have to stop the run and the pass, not quite as good.
And Rodney, you see Gronkowski and Brady hook up for a touchdown for the 91st time, regular and postseason combined. And it felt like Gronk was much more of the Gronk middle of the offense, a guy who was right as a dangerous part of the offense that we hadn't seen to this point.
Yeah, Mike, I look at Gronk and, before the previous bunch of games, I looked at him and he didn't look comfortable out there. He was afraid of guys tackling him around his knees. He didn't want anybody to go low. But today he came with an extra spark, an extra step, some more energy, and he made some big plays, especially with O.J. Howard out. They need big plays from Rob Gronkowski. It's good to see him back catching touchdowns from Tom Brady.
Let's flip this to Gronk and Brady's old team. Tony, New England loses to Denver. How much do you have to factor in how little New England was able to do, especially at the back end of this week, and Cam coming back after missing the time with COVID-19?
I definitely think that's a big part of it. They need chemistry. They need time together. Haven't had it in and out of the lineup, different players in and out of the lineup. But what they're going to have to do is build some chemistry between Cam Newton and those receivers, because people are coming in playing them now saying, if we can take away the running game, take away Cam running, these receivers can't beat us up the field.
And Rodney, before you give us your view on New England, Mike, I know you spoke to Vic Fangio after the game. The other side of this, Denver's schedule has really been messed up. Playing, not playing, traveling, not sure, and all of that. This had to be, in some ways, a very satisfying win for Denver.
Oh, yeah, the game was set for 3 different days over the last 2 weeks, and they're not going to make any excuses about the uncertainty. They just deal with it. But to have that defense step up the way that it did and shut down the New England offense, that was huge for Fangio. But as I said during Football Night in America, Fangio is alarmed by the fact that they're not scoring touchdowns because Patrick Mahomes is up next. And you can't take field goals over touchdowns if you're going to try to outscore the Chiefs.
Yeah, and they just got to figure out a way to get that offensive line back healthy, Mike. They've had so many guys shuffle back and forth, no continuity on that offensive line. They couldn't run the ball. Cam, 2 interceptions. They just have to get back to protecting Cam Newton and being able to run the football.
San Francisco, Buffalo, and then Baltimore, 3 of the next 4 games to New England. So this could be a crucial stretch in their season, Tony, because it's been a long time since we've seen them sitting around 500.
Yeah, but they're going to get it going. The longer Bill Belichick has to work with this group, he'll bring them together, and you're going to see New England in the second half of the year be a team you've got to reckon with.
2-3. You have to go back to 2008, the last time Miami, this point in the season, had a better record than New England. Miami looking decent at 3-3. The Cleveland-Pittsburgh game, Mike Florio, that was a big buildup because let's see if the Browns are for real. Right here they are coming in 4-1, and Pittsburgh just absolutely dominated, reminding them who the big kid on that block was.
Yeah, and it makes it even more amazing because the Steelers, despite being 4-0 for the first time since 1979, had not been impressive in any of their wins. They had barely beaten, for the most part. The Giants game was 10 points, but it was a lot closer than that. I mean, every game of the year, they were either behind or it was closer against an inferior team. So here come the Browns. They're 4-1. And what Cam Hayward told me after the game, they knew that they had to stop the run. And they knew if they could stop the run, they would be able to handle the passing game. And they sensed frustration on the part of the Browns. And Hayward says it's an avalanche effect. And that's how that defense gets the sacks and the interceptions and the pick sixes and just dictates the day. And the next thing you know, it's over for the Cleveland Browns. And the Steelers are 5-0.
Coach Dungy, I have a question for you.
No, I knew he was going to go
Because
here.
last week you was on the Cleveland's bandwagon and you was driving. You was actually driving the entire team. How do you feel about your Cleveland Browns now, Coach?
I still believe in the Browns. I think they're going to be okay. Pittsburgh is a little better than I thought they were. I thought they'd have trouble stopping the Browns' running game, but they did a good job on them. Now, Cleveland, get back to your roots. Don't put it all in Baker Mayfield's hands. Run the football. Play defense, and you're going to be okay.
Rodney, how do you feel?
Coach, but let me just say this real quick. Coach, that's easy to say because once you take away that run, you can't trust Baker Mayfield. That's the issue. Last year, they tried to put everything on his shoulders, and we saw how it worked out. This year, they can't run the ball against the Pittsburgh Steelers. You see what happens with Baker Mayfield, especially an injured Baker Mayfield.
But, Rod, let me come back.
Sorry about it, Mike.
Good. I just want to know, Rodney, how you feel about the Steelers.
Go ahead.
I like the Steelers. I'm impressed with all their young talent on the offensive side of the ball. Defensively, they get after you. They're very physical. And it's really affected the run game because you look at James Conner, and he's running hard. He's running physical. It just seems like they're just playing complementary football. But this is a physical team. You better watch out for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Mike?
The point I wanted to make relates to Baker Mayfield, and it was obvious he was bothered by that chest injury, and you wonder, should Case Keenum have been in the game earlier? It's kind of like the thought process the 49ers went through last week. You start Jimmy Garoppolo when he's clearly bothered by the ankle. Mayfield wasn't himself. I think they should have gone with Keenum earlier. Not that it would have changed the outcome of the game, but you don't want to have to dig out of this 38-7 hole and rebuild your team's confidence and have a day that goes this badly if you're the Browns. I think they're vulnerable at this stage, and I think that maybe they should have flipped to Keenum earlier, guys.
And you know what, let me just make this point, too, because Coach Dungy made an interesting point last week. You talked about Stefanski getting Odell Beckham involved in the game early. He only had 2 catches today. They have to do a better job, no matter who they're playing against, getting him involved in the game because of the energy, because of all the dynamic playmaking ability that he brings.
Yeah, no question. Those receivers make things happen. But for Cleveland to be successful, I really believe they're going to have to run the football. They've got to get Kareem Hunt going, and that's how they win, and no question about it.
The bummer for the Steelers here, Devin Bush, linebacker, very important to what they do. Hard piece for them to replace, out for the season, it looks like, with a knee injury. Now, the Steelers are undefeated, Tennessee's undefeated, and they meet in Nashville on Sunday. You've been fond of Derrick Henry here for years. You've been on the dump truck bandwagon for quite some time. We're going to have to change maybe the name of the bandwagon a little bit, the way he has been running.
Yeah, I love Derrick Henry. Dump truck was a complimentary nickname. But I'm changing now. I'm going to F-150 because this guy has some acceleration. He hits things, and he sets things up for them. They pound the ball with him, and that really makes Ryan Tannehill effective. They've got receivers who can win one-on-one. But when you go into the game and you know, hey, I'm going to see 8-man boxes. I'm not going to see all these exotic coverages because people know they have to deal with Derrick Henry.
And I'm really impressed with Ryan Tannehill, just the way he's come in and just his leadership and the control of the offense that he has. Obviously, Derrick Henry is a big part of that, but A.J. Brown, you saw his impact. Last week, he came in today and I think he had 2 touchdowns. I mean, just a lot of young talent on that Tennessee Titan team.
And guys, I think Derrick Henry is the closest thing to Jim Brown in today's NFL. And I know that's a high bar, but I mean, who's the other guy that big, that strong, and that fast running the football? And he notoriously has been slow to get going, not this year. And, we hear all the time, don't pay running backs. Once you pay a running back, they're never the same. Well, he's even better now that he's gotten paid by the Titans. You
know who he reminds me of, Mike, when I played Earl Campbell. I remember the first time we saw Earl Campbell, and he ran over Isaiah Robertson, and our defensive coordinator was going to run it back, and Jack Lambert said, don't run that back. Let that play go.
My new nickname for him is over and away. Yeah. He runs over and runs away from people. Second 90-plus yard touchdown in his career today at a 94-yarder. Only 6 guys in the history of the league have had 2 90-plus yard touchdown runs. He had it. Really looking forward to that game. It is speed round time. I know, Rodney, it is the moment that your week is at maximum enjoyment. Phillip Rivers' comeback. Give me a word to associate with the comeback for Rivers for Indianapolis over Cincinnati today.
Much needed, because I was starting to get a little nervous with Phillip. I'm starting to look at Phillip and say, Phillip, you're starting to look really old on tape, but he did a great job today and he finished.
Yeah, I'll go with nostalgic, because that's what we're used to seeing Phillip Rivers do. I think Colts fans were happy to see it today.
I'll go with ugly, because you shouldn't have to come back from 21-0 down against these Cincinnati Bengals. And so, and congratulations, you got out of a hole that you never should have fallen into.
But that has nothing to do with Rivers, right? I mean, the defense gave up all the points to the Bengals early.
Right, I know, but still, the whole thing was not a good look for the Colts. They shouldn't have been behind 21-0. It shouldn't have been as close as it was.
Kirk Cousins threw 3 interceptions. Who can I go to first on word association for this? Let me go to
Speaking of ugly,
Mike Florio. You first.
Let me repeat something that I said earlier this year. When the Vikings beat the Saints in the playoffs last year, that secured contracts for Kirk Cousins, Mike Zimmer, Rick Spielman, Dalvin Cook, and I just feel like everybody's on a scholarship year. Like, it doesn't matter. We don't have fans in the stadium. The pandemic's going on. Everyone's got job security, and I just don't feel like they're pushing like other teams are pushing to try to win now and take full advantage of this season, even if it is a different season than anyone's ever seen. I mean, they could have let Cousins go into the final year of his contract, and they extended him through 2022, and now they're stuck.
Florio, I think what happened last week at Seattle really affected them. They just didn't come out with that same energy, that same effort, any of that. And we also know one thing from the very first game this year, if you don't run the ball and if you don't run it through Dalvin Cook, because Dalvin Cook, that run game sets up everything else for the Minnesota Vikings. You have to be able to run the ball. Dalvin Cook, unfortunately, he's not able to play, and that's where they're hurting offensively. They can't run the football.
Mike, I'm going to go with disturbing. You're Minnesota. Yeah, you were coming off a disappointing loss, but you're playing at home. You're playing against a team that hadn't won a game, just fired their coach, had all this upheaval, and you come out and get crushed at home. That's not a good look for the Vikings.
1-5.
Hey, let me add one more quick point here. I think that they are more affected than any other team by not having fans. We've seen Seattle be okay at home. They're okay everywhere. I just think the Vikings at home, they're lost without their fans there and all that noise.
Yeah. And just in a serious vein for all the Minnesota fans, just a shame that you don't get to read Sid Hartman write about it and talk about it. Sid Hartman passed away on Sunday, age 100. He had penned over 21,000 bylines for the newspaper in the Twin Cities there. And it's somebody who you got to know during your Minnesota time as well.
Mike, I met him as a 17-year-old on a recruiting trip up there, and he said, hey, if you come to Minnesota, I will write about you. I'll talk about you forever. And he did. He's had me on his show as recently as 2 months ago. So just a great man. Yeah, so sorry to see that.
Yeah, kept working, kept covering sports. The amazing fact, in addition to the 21,000 stories, plus his byline appeared on, he covered Karl Anthony Towns, Minnesota Timberwolves, and he covered George Mikan. There may not be the Lakers, as we know, the Minneapolis and Los Angeles, without Sid Hartman, an incredible, important figure in the Twin Cities sports scene that deserves a moment of our attention and our thoughts with his family as well. One last point here, guys, on the word association trail. Rodney, the Chicago Bears, speaking of somebody's hometown, the Bears are 5-1 and lead the division. What word comes to mind when you hear that phrase?
Defense. They're being kept in games by their defense, and if we had to completely depend on their offense, they'll be in trouble. But that defense is doing a great job.
I agree with you. Defense. 2 years ago, they went to the playoffs with just phenomenal defense and takeaways, and you're starting to see that again. Nick Foles is going to take care of the football. They're going to be efficient. They're going to be okay on offense, but that defense, ball-hawking secondary, and Khalil Mack putting pressure on people, they're back to their roots and their old formula.
I'll go with another D word. I'll say disrespect. I mean, no one is taking this team seriously. They were underdogs against the Carolina Panthers today. Are you kidding me? 4-1 team, an underdog against a 3-2 team that's supposed to be rebuilding. But you know what? 5-1, 10 games left. They go 500 the rest of the way. They're 10-6. They're in the playoffs this year at 10-6. So they just need to tread water the rest of the way, and they're going to be in the tournament. And I think they're going to do better than tread water because Nick Foles is getting better and better each week.
At the Rams, the Saints, and in Nashville to play Titans the next 3 weeks.
We'll find out about them.
A lot more about
5-4.
And treading water, right?
Come on, Mike, Florio.
Shout out to Tua for making his debut. Yeah. And the Jets are the least competitive team we've seen in a long time in the National Football League. And with that, we'll see you next week. Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.